It's time for the Access of Easy podcast, the weekly technology digest that keeps you ahead of the curve. Brought to you by easyDNS.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Access of Easy, number 289, the data breaching, overreaching audio companion to the EasyDNS newsletter. My name is Joy. I'm here with Len. Buddy, how are you over there? What's going on?
You hit me hard with that data breaching, overreaching stuff. I'm great, Joy. You know what? After this, I'm going to go start enjoying fun in the sun. It's warm over here. I haven't yet enjoyed it. I'm great. And you know what? My work week is done. How are you, Joey?
Done. Worse than you. I'm going to watch March Madness with my wife tonight and work on some related side projects that you and I have going, obviously, with the other show and whatever else is going on. But I did enjoy a little fun this summer with my dog earlier for about 40 minutes. Maybe I'll do it again later. We'll see. It is nice. It's like 11 degrees here in Southern Ontario. I can't complain after the dumping we just got over the last 7 days. So happy to be back with that. I guess, Len, maybe the first thing we should do is talk about the quotes. Last week's quote was, "Get your facts first, then you can distort them as you please." Third week with no winner last week. The quote was by Mark Twain. Now that leaves us with this week's quote. "The bureaucracy is expanding to meet the needs of an expanding bureaucracy." I love that quote. So the rules, as always, you can't Google it. You got to post in the comments under the article on the website. No cheating. No cheating. Okay. We're not having that over here at EasyDNS.
And you tried to figure out who said the quote. You asked the person who provided us the quote.
I did guess. Yeah. I was wrong. You know what? I know that quote because I play a lot of Civilization or Have in the past. And I believe, I believe that one of the research outcomes leads you. This is way off topic, but whatever. The Civilization game is where you carry a civilization from the ancient times, caveman era, all the way through. Yeah. All the way through.
No, 3Es, right. Exploit, explore, and I forget the third one. It's 3Es.
I don't know. And it's a great game though. And you research different things along the way. I recommend this for anyone. If you like this newsletter and like this podcast, you'll like that game. And, as you research different technologies along the way, there's always a fun quote from history to match some of your progress. And one of them is, "The bureaucracy is expanding, meet the needs of an expanding bureaucracy." It might actually be the quote when you research democracy as a government type. Which would be fitting. But anyway, guess, no cheating, no Googling, and we'll let you know next week if anyone wins.
Yeah. And you know what, Joey? There's lots to talk about. Let's just dive right into it. And we'll do a little bit about Nostr right from the get-go, and where you can set up your NIP05 ID under your own domain. And you could actually use this and use the easyNostr or Nostr.ly, mynostr.io, and Nostrario.us. This is all done through EasyDNS. So you can use one of their services to do this. And what is a NIP05? Well, that is the identifier that you have associated with you in Nostr. It's not like in Twitter, you just put your name out there and it's at Joey or at Len or whatever. You could put that as well on Nostr, but there's a specific address, and that is your identifier. So if you go onto it and you can see somebody that has name at something else, that is the NIP05. So EasyDNS is offering these services. Might as well take advantage. Nostr is a great place to get all signal, no noise. The garbage that you get in Twitter is out the door, and it's all goodies, all good stuff in Nostr.
Key feature, right? No algorithm over on Nostr. You have been a proponent of Nostr longer than just what anybody I know. Obviously, it's big in the Bitcoin space, but I think it's gaining traction. I am guilty of not using it as much as I should, but maybe I'll start to reconsider that position as time goes on.
We'll get you on board, Joey. Next, well, Android. There's some very interesting news that came out of them. So there's an update for the security side of things that have come out. So if you're running Android 11, 12, or 13, you should consider getting the upgrade for security patch 2023-0305. That's the March 5th, 2023 security patch or later, because there's some new exploits that are found in there. It's exploits that could allow for remote code execution, and this is with no additional execution privileges required. So 2 new remote code execution exploits have been squashed by this latest security patch release. And as long as you are able to update to the latest one, to 23 2023-0305, you're okay. And the vulnerabilities also include the modem's Qualcomm, which is a closed source component, and that could allow for remote code execution. Not much more details is provided than that, because Google is the one that has the information. They have the keys to all this, but for security reasons, obviously they don't want to release anything. Now, of note, Qualcomm and MediaTek, they're the two biggest modem providers for cell phones throughout the world. They have the two biggest market shares. So, and they're both closed source components. Something to note. So if you have an option that you could use open source components, and there's not very many when it comes to modems, definitely consider it. And I know for me, I'm running Graphene OS. That's a hardened version of Android that's much more secure. But even I can't get the 2023-0305 update. I have the March 1st update. That's the only thing available to me right now. The rollout takes some time. This is unfortunately the way it works in the Android community, because it's fragmented so much. But something of note is this also is a call for people out there, a wake-up call. Don't leave sensitive information on your phone. And also don't leave open door access to cloud services, because if you do and somebody's able to run one of these exploits, well, you're SOL, because now you gave up all your information just for holding that information on your phone, and shame on you.
Great summary there. I'll just note that it looks like this is a buffer overflow vulnerability. There's a lot of different vulnerabilities, obviously, in the hardware space, but buffer overflow is a popular one. So my understanding of this is basically, and actually, Len, this is the reason why a lot of Bitcoin hardware wallets don't carry full feature cameras as well. They're like very narrow in scope, the camera software. Basically what this does, it just feeds requests over and over and over again to a certain piece of hardware, a camera, for example. And as the requests pile in, it reaches like its capacity, quote unquote, and starts writing those requests to an adjacent piece of memory in an attempt to, I think, like queue them or keep the hardware working. This is really popular. And I'm surprised to see that Android phones are susceptible to this, because you can imagine the amount of data that would have to go through as far as like trying to buffer overflow one of those new Android phones. I think the Pixel 7 out geekbenches the iPhone 13. So they're a year apart, obviously, but they're still super powerful phones. And obviously the iPhone 13, the Google Pixel 7 will both do 4K video, high-res photography. So you can imagine the kind of stuff that would be needed to make this happen. And for Google to be very vocal about the update and the requirement. Yeah, you should be doing this. There was a time when doing this kind of security on a mobile device was a lot more difficult. It's great now that even the most kind of rudimentary retail user can just, go to the system settings, update, and be done with it. Fantastic stuff to see.
And these are mini computers what we have in our hand right now. So it's a little bit more secure. We have to be, and so forth. But anyways, Lazarus Group, and they have employed the BYOVD attack. And this is fileless execution in South Korean financial entity attack. So this is a North Korean linked Lazarus Group, and they're at it again. And they're part of a series of cyber attacks. And they are exploiting a zero-day vulnerability used to hack into a financial business entity in South Korea. This happened twice in the span of 1 year, in the past year, in fact. And North Korea is really rather famous for these type of attacks. And these hacks result in stealing funds. I would say it's one of the primary sources they have for gaining revenue, because North Korea and sanctions and everything. So this is maybe a very popular way for them to gain some revenue. And the first attack was reported back in May 2022. And they used a vulnerable version of a certificate software widely used by public institutions and universities. And however, the second attack happened on October 2022, and it involved an exploit of a 0-day in the same program. And they did nothing, I'm guessing, after the May 2022 attack, because if they did it nothing then and they used the same type of exploit for the October, makes me wonder. And the cybersecurity firm and Lab Security Emergency Response Center, ASEC, has refrained from disclosing the software due to the vulnerability not being fully verified yet and a patch not being released. This is pretty scary stuff. And the faith in working on those systems must be at an all-time low, probably the same level as people have faith in the banking systems, especially what happened in the past week. But make no difference here. There's no bailout coming up for people that are impacted by these hacks. There's no Federal Reserve coming to help you out. The Lazarus Group, they've gained initial access by an unknown method and then proceeded to perform lateral movement by using the 0-day bug. They then disabled the NLab v3 anti-malware engine via a BYOVD. That's a bring your own vulnerable driver attack. And it took additional steps to conceal their malicious activities, including changing file names and modifying timestamps. This ultimately allowed them to install multiple backdoor payloads and connect to a remote command and control C2 server to retrieve additional binaries and execute them in a fileless manner. At this point, the hackers, they had total control of the data, and the constant evolution of the Lazarus Group attacks, including anti-forensic techniques, highlights the need for increased cybersecurity measures to combat their persistent threat. Now, don't mess with the North Koreans when it comes to hacking. Remember, they're probably doing this with 386s, probably at the SX variants. And again, that's without the math code processor and a 16-bit bus. Imagine if they had 46 DX2s, man, they'd be rocking and rolling. But in all seriousness, businesses, they got to be more aware of what's going on and how to protect their data. They have to also try to limit their exposure to sensitive data, and understanding there's always a risk because just about every device is plugged into the internet 24/7. And I guess to be on the safe side, don't make fun of Kim Jong-un's haircut, because he might direct his cronies to come after you, and you might be in the receiving end of a cyber attack.
That's right. Unless you got Dennis Rodman on your board, you can count on North Korea trying to get after your data. It's funny that every time I read a story like this, Len, what I always try and look for is where were the initial discoveries made? And you know what name always comes up? ESET. ESET runs it's a security firm. It's a European security firm. But importantly, they have a retail-facing product. So even if you're not a professional suite like these guys were, you can download NOD32. And I think it's pretty cheap. It's like $50 or something like that for a year subscription or a 2-year subscription. And it's pretty highly regarded. Now, I'm not saying, this is not cybersecurity advice, but certainly if you're a listener or viewer of this program, you have at least some know-how and some understanding that you need to be secure in your day-to-day operations, especially on a home computer where you presumably might do banking or photo storage or whatever. These are things that every household in Canada, America, and all the European countries do. And so what you want is have something reliable. You may think Windows Firewall is enough. I don't know. Maybe it is. You may think that the Mac operating system environment is tight enough to prevent something like this from happening. Maybe it is. I'm not sure. But at the end of the day, do you want to find out when it's too late that you should have spent the $50 or $100? It's really not much to add another layer of security to your home network setup. And I think that it's worth noting that ESET, who is in this report mentioned as one of the good guys, has a product available if that floats your boat. So interesting stuff, man. We know every week we talk about another big data breach. It's the thing I would also note, Len, is that you and me have our ears to the pavement when it comes to data and technology and stuff like that because of the involvement in Bitcoin and related topics. But we never see these big data stories in the mainstream media. But it's clear that the kind of battlefield is heating up, and when it comes to cybersecurity. So take care of yourselves out there. It's not that hard to do.
Yeah, and then moving on, the FBI and international police seize NetWire RAT server and arrest the admin. And law enforcement agencies worldwide, including the FBI, recently conducted an international operation that led to the seizure of the NetWire Remote Access Trojan. That's RAT. And arrested a Croatian national suspected to be the administrator of the NetWire website. Now, this is giving me Bitslato vibes, Joy. I'm not sure if you remember that.
Yeah, sure.
Given who's involved, and I'll explain why. The service was promoted as a legitimate remote administration tool. So they were hiding behind this veil of this as being a tool that you could use. But it's being used in various malicious activities, including phishing attacks, business mail compromise campaigns, and network breaches. And here's another example why you don't trust, you verify. And the seizure warrant was approved on March 3rd, and the operation was executed on this past Tuesday. The service was sold via the website www.worldwiredlabs.com, where users could sign up for a subscription as little as $10 a month, which included support. However, since at least 2014, NetWire has been a tool of choice in various malicious activities. Threat actors could use NetWire RAT to remotely take screenshots, download and upload files, execute commands, or download further programs to execute on infected Windows computers. I wonder how many businesses were impacted as a result of this. I suspect not too many home users were buying this type of service, but likely small and maybe even potentially medium-sized were buying into the service. And this operation involved, in fact, the FBI, the United States Attorney's Office for the Central District of California, the Croatian Ministry of the Interior Criminal Police Directorate, Zurich Cantonal Police, Europol, and the Australian Federal Police. This is a worldwide effort covering the whole globe. And there's a lot of people power that they assign to this just to bring down a $10 a month service. But I don't know if anybody out there is thinking about using a similar service, considering doing your own research, a lot of research. Don't be cheap, but also something to note: remote access admin is available for free in a lot of OSs like Linux. So you know what? You don't have to pay for this. It might be freely available. Just got to look for it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing to consider here, I think, for home users, like you mentioned, probably not too many home users using this, but there are similar things that can lure a home user in. Fake antivirus programs, for example, or like you mentioned last week, the whole DHL pay a fee thing. Anything that makes you download a file or gains access to your computer in this way is dangerous. I'll tie it back to Bitcoin here, just because it's something familiar to us. There's a reason why many sort of Bitcoin veterans will say you should never type your private key into your computer. You should never do it, because you just don't know what's there. It's impossible to find out what's there. And if you find out something is there, generally it's going to be too late. And so there's a number of things you can do. Maybe it's not typing in your full credit card number in your computer, or using other ways to enter your payment information, or not putting things like your passport scan or your driver's license scan in your computer. There's a number of ways to protect yourself that, again, add points of friction for attackers. It's if attackers can't find stuff very easily, or they need to install a second kind of creeper or a keylogger or something like that, it's an extra point of friction that you can provide yourself as sort of a barrier, another layer of defense. And it seems to me, Len, that you've mentioned this before. You're a big proponent of this. There's been a lot of trading convenience for security, trading convenience for privacy, and we talked last week about these sort of touch the stove moments. This could be one for those companies. I think the big story down the road will be when there's something that's widely distributed on retail-facing hardware. Guys like you and me, our parents, whatever, right? Like this is what's coming at some point, and that'll be the moment when everyone starts to take security seriously. Unfortunately, by then it'll be too late. So, again, listeners, viewers of this program will be keen on this, and hopefully they spread the word, man. Part of being an informed person is making sure that your friends and family are aware as well.
And a bunch of people that are now informed are a bunch of lawmakers in the states, including their staff. They've been affected by a Capitol Hill data breach, because this past Tuesday, a breach at DC Health Link exposed vital personal information of over several hundred congressional staffers and lawmakers. Now, I wonder if the data breach was given easy access by Capitol Hill police, escorting the packets of data to the destination. We have to probably examine the footage a little bit closer, just like J6. In a letter uncovered by NBC News, Chief Administrative Officer Catherine Zlopin. Oh, sorry, I can't even pronounce that. Zlopindor.
Try it again. People love when people try and pronounce names on the internet. Go ahead.
Zlopindor. That's my guess. Revealed that the Capitol Police and FBI had notified her about this intrusion into the Affordable Care Act online marketplace, where healthcare plans are being held for congressional people and certain staff members from Capitol Hill. The data breach affected Senate offices, including full names, dates of enrollment, relationships, and email addresses, but no other personally identified information was released, but no mention if pronouns were stolen. I want to know if that's the case, because that's the most important thing to me. According to DC Health Benefit Exchange Authority, which operates DC Health Link, the breach has been investigated, and the customers have been provided with identity monitoring and credit monitoring services. And hopefully they're not using www.worldwiredlabs.com service. It's a $10 a month. We're just
noted in the report.
But on the other hand, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries have raised significant concerns about potential data breach of DC Health Link, which could affect thousands of congressional members and employees since 2014. In response to the situation, they requested further information on exactly who was affected by this incident and what steps are being taken to protect victims from any fallout. And if this is the official answer, this is officially what they're releasing that was stolen, who knows what's going on, because there may be some other things that, that may impact people directly or indirectly that may not have been released. And hopefully they didn't get access to the Pelosi trading file, because that would give the hackers a huge advantage when it comes to trading on the markets. But what is this? This is being reported. And the question is, what else has been or will potentially be breached? Will it be secret documents from the government, military files, sensitive financial information? I have no idea, but this is an eye-opener. If the U.S. government is unable to secure the data that they have, this is going to be some troubling times moving ahead.
How many times have we talked about on the other show and on Twitter, and I'm sure over time we'll talk about it on this program as well, honeypots, man. Like when you force everyone into the same place with their data, it just becomes a target. This happens all the time. It happens in finance. It's happened with Equifax. It's happened with so many different things over the years. And I will also note, Len, that you'll remember when it comes to the Affordable Care Act, which I believe is the technical name for Obamacare, if memory serves. Remember when they tried to set that up in 2008? They couldn't even get the website running for like a week and a half. Like governments are good at some things, but establishing websites and protecting data, not among them. And so like, I don't know why they keep trying to do this. We've talked, before about how at some point the government has to kind of like take the hint. They don't scale that well. It might be time to like pass off some of the other stuff to like private corporations, private entities. But like, this is crazy. This happens all the time. The funniest thing is that the results here, okay? You would think that the people in charge would have better answers than this. Spindor told lawmakers and staff to, quote, freeze your credit to prevent anyone from being able to, quote, open a credit card or take out a loan in your name. Thanks for the advice. That's like something you get in a fortune cookie or a magic 8-ball. Like anyone can give you that advice. How about you figure out how to stop this from happening the next time? Or how about you audit your systems every so often? Like probably every major company does on some regular basis. Do you think Google, Microsoft, Meta, like all these guys are auditing their systems constantly? I would bet constantly. There's bug bounties, there's vulnerability bounties. All this stuff exists and is available to other people. There is no copyright on bug bounties. Anyone can do this, including the federal government, but they don't. And to me, this is just like another reason. Stop doing this. Stop giving them your information. Stop asking for it. This stuff needs to all disappear.
If they could print money, why can't they print privacy? Makes me wonder.
I don't know. We got to figure that out.
Federal agencies partnered to develop facial recognition for street cameras and drones. A Freedom of Information Act lawsuit filed by the American Civil Liberties Union led to the discovery of thousands of internal documents revealing the FBI and Defense Department's involvement in advanced surveillance using facial recognition software. The documents show the government's ambition to develop a powerful tool to identify people based on street camera footage and drone footage. Using funding from the Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Agency, the Janus program developed and tested software that could process, quote, truly unconstrained face imagery, end quote, collected by surveillance cameras in public places such as subway stations and street corners in collaboration with FBI scientists and leading computer vision experts. Now, China has been doing this for years. This is something that's not unheard of in today's society or in today's times. But unfortunately, this is being done in societies that you expect to have less privacy. The documents describe a data gathering test that took place at a Defense Department training center that resembles a hospital, subway station, outdoor market, and school. During the experiment, thousands of surveillance videos and images were captured, some of which were captured by a drone. In turn, the improved facial recognition system was integrated into a search tool called Horus. What a freaking name. And made available to the Pentagon's Combating Terrorism Technical Support Office. So 6 federal agencies used Horus since it was introduced, and their feedback is being used to redefine or refine the tool. And refine is another way to make it more efficient at recognizing who and what are they doing and where are they doing it. So it's very scary stuff. So documents show that federal officials were involved in the technology's development more closely than previously thought, even though 3 states and more than a dozen cities banned or restricted its use. According to a deputy director at the ACLU, using facial recognition technology in mass surveillance would be a nightmare scenario. These documents provide a detailed analysis of the technological decisions researchers have made in recent years to take advantage of both artificial intelligence and computer imaging breakthroughs, as well as the accumulating data about Americans. After these documents were revealed, a bipartisan group of lawmakers introduced a bill banning the use of biometrics technologies by federal organizations, including facial recognition and face scanning surveillance devices. And federal dollars would be used to prohibit them from being used for biometric surveillance systems under this bill. But given the information is power, how likely is this bill going to become law? Because it's just a bill that was introduced. The fact that it's being discussed doesn't mean it will indeed become law.
It's never going to become law. There's no chance.
I'm guessing that's the case. It might be another one of those Elizabeth Warren submitted bills. Social credit is something that is been talked about significantly. And that type of system, a social credit score, works hand in hand with a highly surveillanced system. For example, what's going on in China, it could potentially be used for determining your carbon usage, depending on how far you travel. They could then determine how much carbon you use, and there's an allotment of how much carbon you can use per month. It could easily be deducted like that. So this is something that's very scary. I suspect that this is something that may eventually roll out, even though a lot of people don't want it. This bill trying to stop it is probably not going to happen. I know they're stopping this within some states and some cities, but federal law might circumvent state and municipal laws. But again, don't quote me on this. I'm just assuming that to be the case. And I think the federal government trumps everything, pardon the pun.
It's funny that in the last story, we talked about how the government should be protecting its, important information, its secrets via security and cybersecurity. Meanwhile, here, they're just giving it away. All you got to do is file an information request, and they'll tell you all the scandalous stuff you want to know about facial scanning, drone cameras, like farce subway station practice facilities. Like, this is nuts, man. People in the States, I'm going to take a shot at our American friends, okay? People in the States talk like crazy about all the, insanity that goes on in China, the surveillance. We'll never live in a place like that. You're already in a place like that, guys. You're already there. You see it. Between this story, I'm sure at some point in this show we'll talk about the FedNow program, which continues to be prevalent and continues to see more and more announcements and more traction. You're going this direction. We all are. And so the question you shouldn't be asking yourself is, how do I not wind up in a panopticon state, right? With the panopticoin. How do I get out of these things? Well, I'll tell you, man, not to sort of talk about Bitcoin too much here, but the answer is clear. That's at least part of the equation, because you're not going to be able to do anything about drones flying a mile over your house, taking, heat map photos of you and your wife or whatever you're doing over there. It's not pretty. Okay. And it doesn't look like it's stopping. Like Len said, I wouldn't put a lot of money on this thing failing. I think this is probably going to be passed in one form or another, just like every other dumb privacy invading bill the U.S. has tried to pass over the last 25 years. Not that hard to figure out.
And Mark Jeftovic came on, not our show, but a friends of our show, the Your Life, Your Terms podcast. That's the Rockstar Real Estate Gentleman. And so the man, the myth, the legend behind the Bitcoin capitalist and EasyDNS was on there to talk about a variety of subjects. Check out the Your Life, Your Terms podcast, especially with Mark's recent appearance on that show, because he talked about a variety of things, including stuff that's related to Bitcoin. Very interesting podcast, very interesting episode. I listened to it and I was kind of expecting you to show up in that, Joey, but I guess my hopes were squashed. But
I got busy that day, but next time, I'll just add here. I really enjoyed that show. Mark is a guy who's given this realm a lot more thought than you and me, because he's been in it a lot longer. And not that I have to tell people who are listening and watching this to go check out Mark doing another appearance, but you should. It's really, really worth it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. So anyway, that's it for this week. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening, watching, and we will see you next week for number 290. Until then, take care.
Yeah. Take care in PV.